Crix had not blinked in approximately 47 seconds, which was impressive, considering he had 6 eyes, all 6 of them were currently locked onto the human standing in his office, and all 6 of them were filled with the kind of existential dread usually reserved for tax audits and music, surprise health inspections. So, Crix said, his voice climbing half an octave with each word. Let me be absolutely crystal unambiguously clear about this. The Deathworld exhibit is not, under any circumstances, to be entered. Not for cleaning, not for feeding, not for observation, not if you drop your communicator in there, not if someone offers you 1,000,000 credits, not if the Emperor himself commands it. Jamie Keller, newly hired fauna compatibility specialist, which was apparently what the Galactic Union called someone who scooped alien poop for a living, nodded enthusiastically. Their eyes, however, were not on Crix. They were focused on something past his left music shoulder, out the window, toward the distant enclosures. Are you listening to me? Crix's antennae quivered. Human Jamie, this is not a joke. Do you understand the liability insurance premiums on Deathworld creatures? Music. Do you have any comprehension of what a Vorgoth can do to organic matter? Totally, Jamie said, still not making eye contact. No touching the spicy animals. Got it. Spicy. Crix felt a migraine music forming behind eyes 3 and 4. They are not spicy, they are lethally toxic. Hyper-aggressive music, apex predators. From planets where the food chain is less of a chain and more of a circular firing squad, we music have maintained 0 incidents for 847 cycles. 847. That is my legacy, human. That is what keeps me from music dissolving into a puddle of stress hormones every night. That's really impressive, Jamie said. And Crix felt a brief moment of hope. That maybe, just maybe, this human understood the music, gravity of the situation. Then Jamie asked, "What's that big fuzzy one over there?" While pointing out the window, Crix did not need to turn around. And GT, music. And GT. He knew exactly which enclosure was visible from his office window. He had specifically requested this office so he could monitor it at all times. That, Crix said slowly, music is the Vorgoth habitat, and if you are referring to the creature as fuzzy, then you are not looking at its fur, you are looking at music, its sensory spines, which can detect prey from 3 km away and are coated in a neurotoxin, music that causes full body paralysis followed by liquefaction of internal organs. Jamie said, looks lonely though, and that was when Crix made his first mistake. He blinked all 6 eyes simultaneously, just for a fraction of a second. When he opened them again, Jamie was gone. Crix's immediate response was to activate every single panic button in his office simultaneously, which in retrospect music was overkill, but in his defense, he was having what medical professionals would later describe as a significant cardiovascular event. Security, he shrieked into his communicator. Security, we have a code. Crimson, repeat code Crimson, human in the Deathworld exhibit. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, then a deep, weary sigh. That sounded like it had been fermenting for approximately music 1,000 years. Crix, said Cleet, the security chief, the human has been here for 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Cricks's voice could have shattered. Crystal, 6 minutes and you did not think to mention that a soft-skinned biped with no natural defenses has wandered into an enclosure containing 15 species that are banned as bioweapons. Music in 70% of known space. Well, Cleet said, and Cricks could practically hear him scratching his fourth arm. Thoughtfully, I figured you knew. You hired them. Cricks did not remember. Crossing his office, he did not remember. Sprinting down 3 corridors and shouldering past a tour group of shocked Florbian tourists. He only became aware music of his surroundings when he slammed face first into the reinforced observation window of the Vorgoth habitat. All 6 eyes pressed music against the transparent aluminum. What he saw there would haunt him for the rest of his considerably shortened life. Jamie Keller, the human, the soft, delicate creature from the recently discovered backwater planet called Earth, was sitting cross-legged on the ground. The Vorgoth, all 900 kg armored nightmare, was lying down with its massive head in Jamie's lap, and Jamie was scratching behind its auditory receptors like it was some kind of domesticated music companion animal. No, Cricks whispered. No, 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 no. No. The Vorgoth made a sound. It was a sound. Music Cricks had never heard before in 15 years of managing this exhibit. It was almost like a purr, if a purr could also strip paint off walls. Oh, that is deeply upsetting, said a voice next to him. Cricks turned to find Cleet music standing there, all 4 arms crossed, his reptilian features arranged in an expression of profound music resignation. Cleet was a Draxon, which meant he stood nearly 3 m tall. And GT music. And GT had skin like tank armor and had personally survived 2 wars in a pyramid scheme. Nothing fazed Cleet. Music. Cleet looked fazed. How long? Cricks demanded. The human has been petting it for about 4 minutes now, Cleet said. Before that they spent 2 minutes making what I believe are called cooing noises, and you did not tranquilize the Vorgoth. Which one? Cricks did not have time to music process that response, because at that moment Jamie picked up a piece of debris, a support beam that had fallen during last month's meteor shower, and hurled it across the enclosure. The Vorgoth exploded into motion, covering 30 m in 2 seconds, and caught the beam music in its jaws. Then it trotted back to Jamie, sat down and dropped the beam at their music feet, its tail wagging, its enormous spiked venomous tail wagging. Is that thing? Cricks said, faintly, playing fetch? Yes, Cleet said, with a structural support beam. Yes, that is being dissolved by its saliva as we speak. Yes. Cricks made a sound that did not have a direct translation in any known language, but roughly meant I am reassessing every decision I have ever made. That was when the Shriekwing landed. 3 m of leathery wings, serrated beak and claws that could punch through music starship hulls. It perched on Jamie's shoulder like some kind of demented parrot and nuzzled against their neck. Jamie laughed, actually laughed like this was delightful. I'm going music to file so much paperwork about this, Crick said. I will start the betting pool, Cleet replied, pulling out his data pad. 5 credits. Says the human survived the next 10 minutes. Any takers? The rescue team arrived in full tactical gear approximately 90 music seconds later, which was 45 seconds faster than their previous record set during the Great Slorbian escape of Cycle 3847. Music. They looked like they were preparing to storm a fortified military installation, which, to be fair, was not far off from what the Deathworld exhibit essentially was. Status report, barked Commander Thrain. The team leader, whose species had evolved music on a moon with 3 times standard gravity and took professional paranoia very seriously. Crix gestured helplessly at the observation window beyond words. Thrain looked, then looked again, then turned to Crix with an expression that suggested he was reconsidering his entire music career path. Is that human? Thrain said slowly, using a Ravager's spine as a back scratcher. Inside the enclosure, Jamie had indeed acquired what appeared to be a shed spine from one of the other exhibits and was now scratching the Vorgoth's back. With it, the Vorgoth had rolled over onto its side, exposing its vulnerable underbelly, which was supposedly an act of submission these creatures were neurologically incapable of performing. Okay, Jamie's voice came through the observation window's audio feed. Who is a good apex predator? Who is the goodest nightmare music made flesh? You are. Yes, you are. 3 more creatures had joined the gathering, a spike crawler, which looked like someone had given a porcupine anger management issues, and a grudge against the universe, a void cat, which was not actually from the void but had been named that because looking at it too long made you question your place in the cosmos, and something that did not have an official name because the xenobiologist who discovered it had taken one look at it and immediately retired. They were all just sitting there watching Jamie like students waiting for a teacher to start class. This is not music happening, Crix said. This is a stress-induced hallucination. I am actually unconscious in my office right now. Cleet, please confirm that I am hallucinating. You are not hallucinating, Cleet said, now openly taking bets from the assembled music rescue team. 15 credits says the human tries to teach the Vorgoth to sit on command. 20 says they succeed, added one of the rescue team members. I hate all of you, Crix said Jamie, apparently oblivious. Music to the small army gathering outside the enclosure had stood up and was now examining the habitat with a critical eye. The Vorgoth followed music close behind, its previous aura of lethal menace replaced with something that could only be described as hopeful. Puppy energy. If puppies weighed nearly a ton and excreted acid, you know what your problem is, Jamie said, apparently addressing the creatures directly. You are all bored out of your minds. No enrichment activities, no stimulation. Just sitting in here looking scary 24/7. That is not healthy for anyone. I do not care what planet you are from. Enrichment activities, Crix repeated faintly. It is a containment unit for apocalyptic fauna, not a recreational facility. But Jamie was on a roll now, pacing back and forth music while the assembled nightmare creatures tracked movement with obvious interest. Back on Earth, we figured this out. Music centuries ago. You cannot just stick an intelligent creature in a box and expect it to be okay. They need engagement, mental stimulation, social interaction. The shrieking, still music perched on Jamie's shoulder made a sound like a rusty gate being dragged across sheet metal. Jamie patted its head. Exactly. See, this one gets it. I am going to need so much therapy after this, Crix said. Jamie had picked up a small boulder now and was showing it to the Vorgoth holding it up like a prize. You want this, you want the rock, go. Get it, they hurled the boulder across the enclosure. The Vorgoth bounded after it with enthusiasm that would have been adorable if it was not, again, a 900 kg murder machine. It brought the boulder back, dropped it at Jamie's feet, sat down. Good, Jamie said, very good. Now stay. The Vorgoth stayed. Crix felt his primary heart skip several beats. Through the communication channel, he could hear the rescue team making increasingly frantic notes. Commander Threen was muttering something about updating the threat assessment protocols for humans. Okay, Jamie Music said, addressing the Vorgoth while gesturing broadly. This is going to sound weird, but hear me out. I grew up on a Death World 2, Earth. We have got creatures there that would fit right in here. I had 3 dogs growing up, pack hunters. Music descended from wolves' teeth. Like knives, could track prey for miles. Know what we did with them? Taught them tricks, blade fetch. And GT, music. And GT, let them sleep on the furniture. The Vorgoth tilted its head, processing this information with what might have been curiosity. And cats, Jamie continued. Oh man, cats. Music, apex predators, perfect hunters, reflexes so fast they can snatch birds out of the air, retractable claws, night vision. We literally invited them into our homes and called them Mr. Whiskers. What? Said Cleet, is a Mr. Whiskers and horses, Jamie was saying. I had a horse named Thunder, beautiful animal. Also could cave your skull in with one kick, bite hard enough to break music bones and outrun most predators. We put saddles on them and went for rides. There was a long silence in the observation room. Their entire planet is a death world, Cleet said finally. Is that what I am understanding here? The humans are from a death world and they just decided music to domesticate everything else on it, apparently. Crix said, feeling several of his firmly held beliefs about the nature of the universe crumbling like a stale cookie. Inside the enclosure, Jamie had somehow convinced the shriek wing to fly in a circle. Music. When it completed the loop, Jamie produced what appeared to be a ration bar from their pocket and tossed it up. The shriek wing caught it with precision. Music that suggested this was not its first rodeo, which was another Earth expression. Crix music was going to have to look up later. 10 credits says they have the whole exhibit doing synchronized routines by end of shift. Someone in the rescue team said. No bet, replied Commander Threen, lowering his stun rifle. I am not taking that action. I have seen enough impossible things today. Crix pressed his face against the observation window, all 6 eyes wide with a mixture of horror and reluctant fascination. His perfect safety record, his 847 cycles of 0 incidents, his entire professional identity was built on the principle that Death World music creatures were to be observed from a safe distance and never, ever engaged with directly. And here was this human, this impossibly fragile music creature from a planet that had apparently tried very hard to kill its own inhabitants and failed, turning his most dangerous exhibit into something that looked distressingly music like a petting zoo. Cleet and Crix said, yes, Director, I am going to need you to update the insurance policy. Already on it, Cleet said, tapping away at music, his data pad, also filing the day paperwork for Jamie's promotion. Crix's voice Climbed another octave. They have been here for less than an hour and nearly gave me music, a fatal cardiac episode. Yes, Cleet said calmly, but look at the visitor viewing numbers. He turned his data pad around. Digital counter was climbing so fast it was basically a blur, apparently. Watching a human casually handle creatures that had been used as nightmare fuel and music, children's stories across 12 star systems was peak entertainment. Crick stared at the numbers, then at Jamie, who was now apparently teaching the Vorgoth to roll music over, then back at the numbers. I need a drink, he said. I need several drinks. And GT, music. And GT, agreed Commander Threen. I need to collect my winnings, said Cleet, grinning with entirely too many teeth. It took Crix another minutes to work up the courage to actually enter the Deathworld music exhibit. He did so wearing full protective gear, accompanied by half the rescue team, and with his last will and testament freshly music updated on his personal data pad. Jamie looked up as the airlock cycled open, still sitting on the ground with the Vorgoth's head in their lap and approximately 6 other lethal creatures arranged around them in what could only be described as a cuddle puddle of doom. Oh hey boss, Jamie said cheerfully. I was just explaining to everyone here about proper enrichment music protocols. Did you know that most behavioral issues in captive animals stem from inadequate mental stimulation and lack of agency in their environment? Crix opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out except a faint wheeze. The human has a music point, Cleet said from behind him. I took a xenozoology course once, failed it, but I remember that part. You, Crix managed finally, pointing a trembling appendage at Jamie, are sitting in the middle of 15 creatures that could end your biological functions in music, 15 different horrifying ways. And you are lecturing me about enrichment protocols? Well, yeah, Jamie said like this was obvious. Look at them, they are not aggressive, they are understimulated. Big difference. As if to demonstrate, Jamie scratched the Vorgoth behind its auditory ridge. The creature made that pain-stripping purr sound again and rolled over, exposing its underbelly. One massive paw came up and batted playfully at music. Jamie's hand. See, Jamie said. Totally harmless. Its saliva can dissolve titanium, Crix shrieked. Sure, but it is not doing that right now, is it? Jamie countered. Because it is not stressed or threatened, it is just a big sweetie who needed some attention. Weren't you? Yes, you were. The Vorgoth's tail wagged again, slamming into the ground with enough force to crack the reinforced flooring. Crix felt his worldview, carefully constructed over decades of rigorous academic study and professional experience, shattering like dropped glassware. Music. This is not possible. Vorgoth are solitary ambush predators with aggression levels that spike at the mere presence of other organisms. They are neurologically incapable of social bonding. Maybe in the wild, Jamie said, but in captivity with no outlet for their natural music behaviors. Yeah, they get cranky. Wouldn't you? Jamie stood up, music gently moving the Vorgoth's head aside. The creature watched them go with what could only be described music as disappointment. Watch this. Jamie walked over to the spike crawler, which had been classified as a level 9 biohazard and was legally required to be kept in isolation. Music They held out their hand. No, Crix lunged forward, but Cleet caught him. With 2 arms, music. Just watch, Cleet said, the spike. Crawler sniffed Jamie's hand, then. Gently, impossibly gently. And GT, music. And GT, bumped its head against their palm. Jamie scratched under its chin. The creature's thousands of venomous spines. Flattened against music, its body in an apparent expression of contentment. Good baby, Jamie cooed. Such a good baby. I am having a medical emergency, Crix said. Someone call the medical emergency. And GT, music. And GT, you want to see something really cool? Jamie asked and did not wait for an answer. And GT, music. And GT, they put 2 fingers in their mouth and whistled a sharp piercing sound that made everyone except Jamie flinch. Vorgoth stood up, walked over to a specific spot in the enclosure, sat down. Jamie whistled again, a different pattern. The shriek wing took off, flew in a figure 8, and landed on a perch that had definitely not been there this morning. A third whistle, the spike. Crawler rolled onto its back. You taught them tricks, Crix said faintly. In less than an hour you taught Deathworld apex predators to music, perform tricks on command. They are really smart, Jamie said enthusiastically, way smarter than you have been giving them credit for. The Vorgoth figured out sit music in like 5 minutes. The shriek wing already knew how to fetch. It just needed someone to throw things for it. And GT, music. And GT, and this little guy, Jamie patted the spike. Crawler has been absolutely starved for physical contact, haven't you? Music precious, the spike. Crawler made a sound like grinding metal mixed with wind chimes. It sounded almost happy. Music. This is wrong, Crix said, but his protest lacked conviction. This violates every protocol, every safety regulation, every principle of xenozoological management. Does it violate music, the principle of not making animals miserable for no reason? Jamie asked. And there was an edge to their voice. Now the first sign of actual seriousness Crix had heard from them. Because that is what you have been doing. And GT, music. And GT, these creatures are not monsters. They are just animals from harsh environments who adapted to survive. You stuck them in boxes and forgot they were living things. Crix had no response to that. Mostly because Jamie was music, right? And he knew it, and that knowledge tasted like shame and expired nutrient paste. Back on Earth, Jamie continued, their voice softening. Music again. We have got dogs. I mentioned them before. Descended from wolves. Wolves are pack hunters. Efficient killers, teeth designed to tear through flesh and crush bone. Bite. Music, force that can break a deer's spine. And somewhere along the line, some crazy humans looked at these predators and said, you know what, I bet we could be friends. The Vorgoth had wandered back over and was leaning against Jamie's side, nearly knocking them over with its bulk. And we were right, Jamie said, scratching the Vorgoth absently, because we understood music, something important. Aggression and danger are not the same as evil or malice. These animals are not trying to hurt anyone, they are just trying music to exist. And when you give them what they actually need, space and stimulation, and yes, even affection, they are fine. Better than fine. Your species is insane, Crick said, but there was wonder in his voice now, instead of horror. Oh, absolutely, Jamie agreed. Cheerfully, we domesticated wolves and cats who are obligate carnivores and basically tiny murder machines, and horses which are prey animals that can kill you if you spook them wrong. Music, and we kept them in our homes. We bred pigeons for fun. We made friends with corvids which are smart enough to hold grudges across generations. One guy in Australia tried to domesticate cassowaries. What is a cassowary? Cleet asked. Imagine a bird that stands 2 m tall, has a knife on its head, and has killed multiple humans, Jamie said. Now imagine someone looking at that and thinking, I want 5 of those in my backyard. Did it work? Cleet asked. No, he died, Jamie said, but the point is we tried. Because humans do not see danger and think stay music away from that, we think I wonder if I can pet it. Cricks looked around the Deathworld exhibit at the creatures that were now calm, engaged, and apparently content, at the viewing numbers that were still climbing on Cleet's datapad, at Jamie, who was casually leaning against a creature that had a bite force measured in tons per square centimeter. Fine, Crick said, and the word hurt coming out. Fine, you can implement your enrichment program, but you are writing all the documentation, music, and if anything goes wrong, I am blaming you. Nothing is going to go wrong, Jamie said confidently. Statement that would prove to be both technically true and wildly misleading. Also, you are promoted, Cricks added. Senior Fauna Compatibility Specialist. Effective immediately. Does that come with a raise if you keep the creatures from eating the visitors? Yes, deal, Jamie said, and shook Cricks's appendage with a grip that was surprisingly firm for such a small creature. As they left the enclosure, Cricks heard Cleet collecting his winnings from the rescue team, who were grumbling about never betting against humans again. Cricks decided he was going to need that drink. After all, possibly several, possibly an entire barrel. The next 3 days were, in Cricks's professional opinion, a sustained exercise music in controlled chaos that somehow never quite tipped over into actual disaster. Jamie had wasted no time music implementing what they called the Comprehensive Enrichment Initiative, which was apparently human speak for turning the Deathworld exhibit into something that looked less like a maximum security prison. And GT music, and GT, and more like, and Cricks shuddered at the phrase, a fun activity center. The Vorgoth now had a collection of indestructible toys. Well, mostly indestructible. They went through about 3 synthetic rubber spheres per day. But the creature was noticeably calmer, and it stopped trying to dissolve the observation windows out of apparent boredom. The Shriekwing had an elaborate climbing structure that Jamie had designed and Cleet's security team had reluctantly constructed, all of them wearing full tactical gear and music, looking deeply uncomfortable the entire time. The creature spent hours navigating the structure, occasionally dive-bombing Jamie for treats, which should have been terrifying but somehow just looked like an extremely dangerous game of catch. The spike crawler had a dig pit in a maximum security xenozoological facility. Music. Jamie had justified this by pointing out that the species was naturally fossorial, and denying it the ability to burrow was, quote, basically psychological torture, end quote. The creature had immediately burrowed into the pit and emerged looking as much as a nightmarish ball of living weapons could. Look absolutely delighted. But the real change music was not in the enclosures, it was in the creatures themselves. Crick stood at the observation window, watching through his multiple eyes as Jamie moved through the exhibit with the casual confidence of someone music. Walking through a park, the creatures followed not with predatory interest, but with something music that looked disturbingly like affection. The Vorgoth trotted alongside Jamie like music, an oversized dog, the Shriekwing rode on their shoulder. Even the creature with no name had emerged from its usual hiding spot and was observing from a nearby perch. Visitor satisfaction is up 400%, music, Cleet said, appearing next to Crix with his usual unnerving silence. Revenue has increased proportionally. The Galactic Tourism Board sent a commendation this morning. I am thrilled, Crix said flatly. Tell me, Cleet, do you ever have nightmares, music, about the statistical improbability of what we are witnessing? Every night, Cleet said, but I sleep better knowing the human is on our side. Inside the exhibit, Jamie had set up what appeared to be an obstacle course. They were currently guiding the Vorgoth through it using a combination of hand signals and verbal commands. The creature moved with surprising grace for something that weighed as much as a small spacecraft, navigating around barriers, through tunnels, and over platforms. Music. A crowd had gathered at the observation windows. Crix recognized species from at least 30 different systems, all watching with expressions ranging from amazement, music, to existential horror. Several were recording on their personal devices. One Florbian had apparently fainted music and was being attended to by medical staff. Is the human making it jump through hoops? Asked a Centaurian tourist next to Crix, their voice filled with awe. Technically, those are reinforced transit rings from decommissioned cargo haulers, Crix said. But yes, essentially hoops. The Vorgoth cleared the final ring, landed with a ground-shaking thud, and immediately looked to Jamie for approval. Jamie produced a treat from their pocket. And GT, music. And GT, some kind of protein supplement mixed with what Jamie had called enrichment nutrients, which as far as Crix could tell was just regular nutrients with a fancy name. The Vorgoth accepted the treat with surprising gentleness and then did music, something that made Crix's primary heart skip another beat. It wagged its tail, not the aggressive thrashing that usually preceded an attack, not the warning sweep that meant back away slowly. An actual, genuine, happy tail wag. I'm never going to emotionally recover from this, Crix said. Neither is our insurance provider, Cleet added. They have been calling every hour asking for updates. I think they are trying to figure music out. If they can drop us as clients, can they? Legally, yes. Practically, no. We are the only facility in the sector, music. With Deathworld specimens, they need us more than we need them. Cleet paused. The human asked for a budget increase. By the way, for what? More toys, training equipment, something called a ball pit. Music, which I looked up in, appears to be a container filled with colored spheres for the spike crawler. Crix turned all 6 music eyes on Cleet. A ball pit, the human says it will provide sensory stimulation and encourage natural music, foraging behaviors. The spike crawler hunts by ambushing prey and impaling them on Venomous-sized spines, yes, Cleat. Agreed, but apparently even apex predators enjoy recreational activities. Who knew? Humans knew, Crick said. Humans knew because their entire evolutionary history is a story of befriending things that should have eaten them and somehow making it work. Inside the exhibit, Jamie had moved on to working with the Shriekwing, teaching it what appeared to be a complex aerial maneuver. The creature executed a barrel roll that would have made a fighter pilot jealous, then landed perfectly on Jamie's outstretched arm. The crowd at the observation window applauded, music applauded. They were applauding a creature that had been used as a biological weapon in two separate interstellar conflicts. You know what the worst part is? Crix said. It is working. And GT, music. And GT, the creatures are healthier. Behavioral stress indicators are down across the board. They are eating better, sleeping better, music showing increased social engagement by every measurable metric. Jamie was right and I was wrong. That must be difficult for you, Cleat said not unkindly. It is devastating. Crix admitted. I have built my entire career on the principle of minimal intervention and maximum security, and this human shows up and proves that sometimes the most dangerous music thing you can do is nothing at all. They watched in silence as Jamie completed the day's training session. The creatures returned to their designated rest areas, but unlike before, they did not retreat into defensive postures or aggressive displays. They just settled down, content and calm. Jamie approached the exit airlock, covered in dust and what Crix hoped was just mud. They gave a cheerful wave to the observation window, apparently not noticing or not caring that half the visitors were staring at them like they were some kind of mythical being. Cleat, Crix said. Yes. Director, approve the budget increase. All of it, and order more protective gear for music. The staff, if we are doing this, we are doing it properly. And the insurance company, tell them to adjust or find another client. We are keeping the human. Cleat's grin was positively music predatory. Yes. Director, should I also start preparing the paperwork for the expansion? Jamie proposed. Crix felt a headache forming behind eyes 2 and 5. What expansion? The human wants to extend the enrichment music program to the other exhibits, starting with the Margesh swarm colony. The Margesh, Crix's voice climbed toward frequencies usually reserved for emergency music alerts. The insectoid hive mind that communicates through pheromones and has a collective intelligence that rivals most planetary music defense networks. That is the one, Cleat confirmed. Jamie thinks they might enjoy puzzle feeders and group activities. Crix looked at the ceiling as if the universe might offer music some explanation for why this was his life. Now, the universe as usual remained silent. Fine, he said, but I'm taking vacation after this, somewhere quiet, somewhere with no death world creatures, somewhere where the most dangerous thing is a mild sunburn. Good luck finding that, Cleat said. The human mentioned that Earth has deserts where the daytime temperature can cook you alive, and oceans with enough salt to preserve music, a corpse, indefinitely. And they vacation there for fun. Crix made a sound music like a slowly deflating balloon. I hate this timeline. But the visitor numbers. And GT, music. And GT, Cleat said, gesturing to his datapad. where the statistics continued their relentless climb, but the visitor numbers. Crix agreed miserably. 1 week later, Crix stood in his office, reviewing incident reports, which had become his new favorite activity. Because for the first time in his career, the reports were actually boring. No escape attempts, no aggressive displays, no emergency protocols activated. Just page after page of normal, routine, blissfully uneventful operations. It was glorious. He was 3 pages into a particularly mundane maintenance log when his communicator chirped. It was reception. "Director Crix," said Pella, the receptionist, who was a Glamourian and therefore incapable of lying due to some quirk of their species' biology. "We have a new human employee arriving for orientation, a transfer from the Earth cultural exchange program." Crix felt something cold settle in his lower digestive tract. "Another human?" "Yes. Director, they just arrived at the main entrance. Should I send them up?" Crix looked at his desk, at his neatly organized reports, at his half-finished beverage music that had finally stopped shaking every time he tried to drink it, at the small measure of peace he music had managed to carve out of the chaos that was his life now. "Yes," he said, because the universe had a sense of humor. Music, and Crix was apparently the punchline. "Send them up." The new human arrived exactly 4 minutes later. Their name was Riley Park, according to the personnel file that Crix had pulled up on his terminal. Background in xenobotany music, with a minor in animal behavior. Glowing recommendations from 3 different Earth institutions. Profile music. Picture showing a human with a friendly smile and what Crix had learned to recognize as that distinctive gleam in the eyes that meant trouble. "Director Crix," Riley said, music extending their hand in the human greeting gesture that Crix had reluctantly learned meant shake this appendage or cause offense. "It is an honor to be here. I have heard amazing things about your facility." "Have you?" Crix said, shaking the offered hand with one of his secondary manipulator arms while keeping his music primary eyes on Riley and his secondary eyes on the exit. "What exactly have you heard?" "Oh, you know the standard stuff," Riley said, their enthusiasm practically radiating off them in waves. "State-of-the-art facilities, diverse species collection, and of course the music Deathworld exhibit. That is the main reason I requested the transfer. Actually, of course it was. Of course." Crix felt his carefully reconstructed music sense of stability beginning to crack like thin ice. "I see," he said, pulling up the orientation materials on his display. "Well then, let me begin with the safety protocols. First and most importantly, the Deathworld exhibit is a restricted area. Access requires level 3 clearance, full protective equipment, and approval from myself or the senior staff. Under no circumstances are you to enter the exhibit without proper authorization and supervision. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear," Riley said, nodding music enthusiastically. But Crix noticed their eyes had drifted toward the window behind his desk, toward the distant view of the Deathworld exhibit. Crix pressed on, his voice taking on the practiced tone of someone who had given this speech before and knew it would not make a difference but had to try anyway. "The creatures in that exhibit are classified as extreme hazard xenofauna. They are apex predators from high gravity, high competition ecosystems, they possess natural weaponry ranging from neurotoxins to plasma generation. Several of them are banned as military assets in 73 systems. Wow, Riley Music said, that is so cool. It is not cool, Crick said, his voice climbing. It is dangerous. Lethal. These are not domesticated music animals. They are barely contained forces of nature with teeth and claws and the instinctual drive to kill anything they perceive as prey or threat. Right, Riley said, still nodding. Question though. Yes, is that where you keep the music cute ones? Crix felt all 6 of his eyes twitch simultaneously. It was the exact same question, the exact music, same tone, the exact same look of innocent curiosity masking what was clearly going to be music. Another sustained assault on his cardiovascular health. Define cute, Crix said weakly. You know, the fluffy ones, the ones with the big eyes, the ones that look like they might enjoy belly rubs. Riley was leaning forward now, their human face arranged in an expression of genuine excitement. I saw the viral videos from last week. The Vorgoth doing tricks, that was incredible, and they Shriekwing performing aerial stunts. I have been studying Deathworld fauna for 3 years, and I never imagined they could be so trainable. They are not pets, Crix said, but he could hear the defeat in his own voice. Of course not, Riley agreed. They are highly intelligent apex predators, music, deserving of respect and proper enrichment, but also, I mean, look at them. Riley had pulled up a video on their personal device showing Jamie playing fetch with the Vorgoth. That is basically a giant puppy with acid spit. How is anyone supposed to resist music? That. Crix put his face in his primary hands. All 4 of them. You are going to enter the Deathworld exhibit within the first hour of your employment here, are you not? What? Riley said, and had the audacity to sound offended. No, I would never violate safety protocols like that. I have way too much respect for proper procedures and institutional authority. But if I happen to be conducting a routine perimeter inspection of the exterior fencing and one of the creatures seemed distressed or in need of immediate enrichment intervention, I would obviously need to respond appropriately as a trained xenofauna specialist. There it is, Crix said. There is the loophole. Cleet, the security chief, materialized in the doorway with his characteristic unnerving timing. Yes, Director. How long until the human enters the Deathworld exhibit? Cleet pulled out his data pad, already displaying what appeared to be a betting interface. Current odds say 47 minutes. I am personally betting on 35. You are supposed to prevent this, Crix said. I'm supposed to maintain security, Cleet corrected. The humans are not a security threat. They're more like a force of nature. You do not prevent a force of nature. You just document it and hope your insurance covers acts of chaos. Riley was looking between them with confusion. Is there something I should know about? Yes, Crix said. Your species is insane. And GT, music. And GT, certifiably insane. You come from a planet that spent millions of years trying to kill you, and instead of developing music, a healthy sense of fear, you developed an irresistible compulsion to befriend everything with teeth. Well, Riley said slowly, when you put it like that, it sounds bad. It is bad, but consider, Riley continued, music, warming to the topic, that our evolutionary strategy was actually incredibly successful. We are a social species that learned to form cooperative bonds with other species. That is rare in the galaxy, right? Most sapient species evolved as either pack hunters or solitary operators. But humans, we teamed up with wolves and turned them into dogs. And GT, music. And GT, we convinced cats to tolerate us. We domesticated everything from horses to elephants, music to honey bees. You domesticated insects, Cleet asked, looking up from his data pad. Bees. Yeah, Riley said, we keep them in boxes, music, and they make us honey. It is a whole thing, very symbiotic. Your species, Crick said, looked at stinging insects that live in organized music colonies with defensive behaviors and thought, I want their vomit. Okay, that is a really music uncharitable way to describe honey, Riley protested, but technically accurate. There was a long silence in the office. Outside the window, Crix could see the Deathworld exhibit in the distance. Jamie was visible near one of the enclosures, apparently conducting another training session. The Vorgoth was doing what looked like agility drills. Fine, Crix said, pulling up the orientation forms on his terminal. Fine, you are assigned to the Deathworld exhibit as assistant fauna specialist. You will report to Jamie Keller, who will either teach you proper protocols or get you both killed in a creative and extremely well-documented manner. Your first day starts tomorrow at 700 Standard Time. And GT, music. And GT, do not be late. Do not enter any enclosures without supervision. Do not attempt to pet anything without explicit permission. And for the sake of my remaining cardiovascular function. And GT, music. And GT, try to make it through at least one full shift before giving me another medical emergency. I promise to do my best. And GT, music. And GT, Riley said, which was not actually a promise to follow any of the stated instructions, and they all knew it, as Riley left the office, presumably to familiarize music themselves with the facility layout and identify the fastest route to the Deathworld exhibit. Cleet settled into one of music, the visitor chairs. You know, Cleet said conversationally, when the humans first made contact with the Galactic Union, everyone was worried about them being aggressive music or warlike. Yes, Crick said, pulling up the personnel files for the next wave of Earth transfers that were apparently scheduled for the following month. 3 more humans, 3. But it turns out, Cleet continued, the real concern should have been that they would show up and just casually redefine our entire understanding of what constitutes dangerous music. Fauna, they are going to revolutionize xenozoology, Crix said. Every facility in the Union is going music. To want human specialists, this is going to become standard practice. Everything I have spent my career building, every protocol, every safety measure, every carefully maintained separation between observer and observed, it is all going to change. Progress is terrifying. Cleet agreed. I am going to need a bigger office and significantly more comprehensive medical coverage, and possibly a therapist already added to the budget, Cleet said. Corporate approved. it immediately after seeing last quarter's revenue numbers. From somewhere music in the distance. Crix heard a sound. It took him a moment to recognize it as the Vorgoth's greeting call, the one it made when Jamie arrived for a shift. It sounded almost happy. Crix pulled up the security feed on his terminal, splitting his attention between the various cameras throughout the facility. There was Riley, exactly as predicted, already making their way toward the Deathworld exhibit with the purposeful stride of someone on a mission. There was Jamie, waving from inside the enclosure as the Vorgoth bounded over. Like an oversized puppy, there was the Shriekwing perched on its climbing structure, watching the approaching human with what might have been curiosity, and there in the background was a crowd of visitors from a dozen different species, all watching with fascination as humanity's strange talent for befriending the unbefriendable played out in real time. Crix said, "Yes, Director, start a new betting pool. How long until Riley has taught something new to one music of the creatures already running?" Cleet said, displaying his data pad. "Current over-under is 90 minutes. I am taking action if you want in." Crix considered his options. Music considered his budget, considered his blood pressure. "Put me down for 75 minutes, Music," he said, "and make a note in the log." Official director's note, quote, "Humanity's music capacity for interspecies bonding is both the most terrifying and most valuable asset the Galactic Music Union has encountered. We are extremely fortunate they decided to join us peacefully." End quote. Noted. Cleet said, "Music, anything else?" "Yes," Crix said, watching on the monitor as Riley reached the observation window and pressed their face against it with the exact same expression, music of delight, that Jamie had worn 1 week earlier. "Order more enrichment supplies, all types, and start drawing up plans, Music, for expanding the program to the other exhibits. If we are doing this, if we are really letting humans revolutionize how we handle dangerous fauna, then we are going to do it right. You are actually embracing this," Cleet observed. "I am accepting the inevitable," Crix corrected. "There is a difference. The humans are here. More are coming and trying to stop Music them from befriending every dangerous creature in the galaxy would be like trying to stop a supernova with a particularly stern memo. So instead, I am going to adapt, evolve, and possibly develop a substance, music dependency to cope." "That is very mature of you," Cleet said. "That is very defeated of me," Crix countered. "But at least the visitor numbers are good on the monitor." Riley had somehow already Music made contact with Jamie through the communication system. They were talking animatedly, gesturing Music at the creatures, clearly discussing enrichment strategies. The Vorgoth had noticed Riley Music and was watching them with interest. Crix sighed, a sound that resonated from all 3 of his respiratory chambers. "I give it 30 minutes before Riley is inside the enclosure. 20 says they are already planning it," Cleet said. And GT, Music. And GT. "No bet," Crix replied. "I am not a fool. Not anymore." And as he watched the 2 humans enthusiastically discuss how to better enrich the lives of creatures that could end civilizations, Crix had to admit, if only to himself, that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was better off with humans in it, even if they were going to give him a fatal cardiac episode eventually, at least it would be well documented.